Welcome back, Chicago. You're listening to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. You can check out my website, shalomklein.com. That's where you can download the podcast from the show. And my next guest, as I mentioned earlier, is no stranger to the Chicago airwaves. I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be joined by Katherine Johns, a legendary radio host here in Chicago. And some of you might not know, she also has a fantastic book. Is a prolific speaker, so much to share. But Katherine, welcome to the studio. Welcome to Get Down to Business.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to get down to business with you, Shalom.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I know you've been staying busy in this era of COVID. You've been doing some speaking through Zoom, but it's fun that we were able to do this in person. To be clear, we have got a big plastic partition between us over here.
Yes, we do.
We do.
We are socially distanced, baby.
We are socially distanced indeed. But Katherine, as I always love to do, you just heard some of our previous guests. I love to get to know the person behind the microphone. You have a legendary career, which I don't know how it's possible that you've had so many years in the business, being as young as you are.
Bless your heart.
I know. But Katherine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself is really more about my clients than it is about me. You may have noticed that there are a lot of people in business who are not that good at communicating. And that's where I come in because, as you said, long career in communication, and I bring that experience to executives, independent professionals, people who want to be more compelling in the way they talk about their business. So, as you said, I'm a speaker and a consultant around speaking.
And it's amazing because when we started talking about having you come on the air, it's so timely right now. Communication is more important than ever. It's not in an era of social distancing. It means actually you have to be even more careful with every message you put out. So, Katherine, how did you develop that message for yourself? And as you said, for your clients, how did that come together?
You know, a piece of it is not saying a lot. Many people have a tendency to over-communicate. You may have heard that going on as well. And so I coach people to be pithier, more compelling, and get their point across quickly. And radio was a great background for that. You know, I tell people I learned to tell any story you could think of in 30 seconds with room at the end to say, Katherine Johns, WLS News.
And so I have to ask, Katherine, how strange is it when you are the person on the other side of the microphone being interviewed? Did that take a little while to get used to?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I will have mouth, will talk.
I know it's true, and you coach your clients in that. So I want to get into that a little bit. You have a number of topics that I found interesting. Uninterruptible, making the conversation count. I love it. I love that message. So how does somebody, once we're having these meetings on Zoom, and it seems just zooming all day long, and you have 30 minutes for a conversation, how do you create the right balance between the personal, the professional? How do you really get to know somebody and establish trust in a business relationship when you're never actually shaking hands and actually having that, as I tend to do, a lot of cups of coffee? How do you make that conversation count?
Well, this is another area where my radio background comes into play because I have clients who say all the time, I don't like talking to the screen. I don't like talking to the camera. I miss being with people. I had years of experience. I was doing virtual meetings before they called virtual meetings, right? So I had these connections with people. And I think it has to do with being willing to be open. So I show up as who I really am on a Zoom meeting or on the radio. And that frees other people to show up as who they really are. Like somebody has to go first in being, I hate to use the word vulnerable, but let's say authentic. And once we establish that tone, it makes it easier for everybody to be more authentic.
So I want to stick on that theme for a second. That introduction piece is perhaps the most important moment of the entire conversation. I know you speak regularly on that topic, that first impression is everything. I think you call it the magnetic start over there. Yeah. And that's so important. So how does somebody, whether it's in person or virtual, how do you make that first impression count?
I actually have a 5-part formula for that. Want to hear it?
I do.
All right. So you start talking about the people you serve, not about me. what I've done, my long career, and I had this book, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about that until you give them a reason to care. So you give them a reason to care by making it about them first. What is the pickle they're in? What would the promised land look like for them? If they didn't have that pickle, what would that be like? That's when you finally get to talk about you. What's your path to get them from the pickle to the promised land? And then, got any proof? Just a tiny little bit of evidence that what you say you can do, you've really done.
It's fascinating. That's such important information. And we're going to talk about leadership. I want to talk about leadership in a second. But, Katherine, you did, as I mentioned earlier, you wrote a book, Show Up and Shine, which is a bestseller. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And Show Up and Shine, I know, covers a lot of the principles that you talk about that you're sharing with our listeners tonight. Tell us a little bit about how that worked, going from microphone to a book, and what the reaction has been.
So I was in a coaching program for speakers, and they said, go home and write a book. You got to have a book if you're going to be a successful speaker. So I did. And thank God, because on my own, I'm not sure I would have sat down and actually done it. And if you read that book, you will hear my voice, because I write the way I talk. And it came out actually pretty easily.
You are a communicator for sure. Visit KatherineJohns.com, where you could get Show Up and Shine. You could learn all about Katherine's practice. We're going to be back with Katherine Johns in just a moment, talking about leadership, talking about communication. You're listening to Get Down to Business. I'll be back in just a moment.
AM 560, The Answer.
I'm chatting with the author of the awesome book, Show Up and Shine. I'm chatting with Katherine Johns, a legendary radio host here in Chicago, as we were just saying during the break, a voice for radio, but a of communication. That's what we've been talking all about. Katherine, I know you have a philosophy that everybody's a leader, that you can lead up, lead down. Ultimately, everybody needs to learn how to lead. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the principles that you share with your clients?
So I think leadership is first and foremost about communication, because if you can't communicate effectively, you can't possibly lead. So everybody needs to be better at communication. And I also think that it takes a certain presence to lead. And so it's not only about how much you know or what an expert you are, it's about how you show up. We mentioned a little bit ago, showing up is who you really are, being authentic. That's a piece of it. But also having, what they call in the military is, a command presence. So what is that exactly? It's about fully occupying the space, being seen, being heard. One of the things I've run into lately is people doing Zoom meetings and wondering why they don't get to fully participate, and it doesn't seem like people take them seriously. They have their cameras off, Shalom. So if you're not willing to be seen, you're likely to be overlooked.
Absolutely spot on. And Katherine, if there's one thing that you want our listeners to take away from our conversation today, one thing that as they go into the work week ahead that they can do to perhaps make their week a little bit more productive, a little bit more successful, a little bit more authentic, as you would say, what would it be?
Do at least as much listening as talking, maybe more.
Spot on. Oh, my gosh. I share that with our listeners all the time, whether you're looking for a job, whether you're looking to grow your business. Ultimately, it's about listening more than speaking, for sure. So, Katherine, you work with your clients that are all over the place. Certainly, that's the world that we're in. COVID-19, everybody, you could have a global client base. And I know you offer a free consultation through your website. People can go on there and also download an ebook, some information about networking, which is so important. So, Katherine, tell us a little bit of profile of sort of an ideal client for you.
My ideal client is somebody who feels overlooked and underheard. And they want to have a bigger profile. They want to make a bigger splash. They want to be more successful, and they're willing to put some time and effort into that.
And you work with them in coaching them, or are you holding their hand through the process? What does that coaching relationship look like?
Anybody who knows me well would be surprised if they thought I was a hand-holding kind of coach. Not that I can't be supportive and friendly, but I think it's often about giving people a nudge to make some changes.
Well, the nudger-in-chief, Katherine Johns, there we go. Katherine, how can people get a hold of you if they want to purchase a copy of the book, if they want to download that ebook, the short read about networking, or schedule a consultation with you?
My website is a great place. That would be KatherineJohns.com, surprisingly enough. And I do a lot on LinkedIn, so I'm really active in LinkedIn. Like Ed said earlier, he was talking about, and I'm going to go hook up with Ed on LinkedIn as an alumni of your show, or an alumna of your show.
There we go.
So find me on LinkedIn and let's connect there. I post 5 days a week about business communication and have some really interesting exchanges with people there.
I agree. Some fascinating content and information. Visit KatherineJohns.com. Katherine, during your time on the radio, in our closing few moments together, what is your favorite memory or maybe funniest moment?
Jeez, what a question. 25 years. There were a lot of memories. All right, I've got one. There was a time with Larry Lujack. We might remember him. Long-time host here in Chicago, super jock, very funny guy, where he cracked up completely on the air, and it wasn't a bit. I mean, it was legit that he just lost it. It was around some monkey business in the studio, and he and Jeff Hendricks and I and Les Grobstein had the most fun looking at hand-drawn pictures of mothers-in-law. I'm not going any farther with it, but it was fun.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. That's awesome. I'm chatting with Katherine Johns, legendary Chicago radio host, book author, and coach on communication and all things networking, all things communication. And really these topics are so important, even in this era, especially in this era of social distancing, as we were saying earlier. You could get on Katherine's website, KatherineJohns.com. And finally, Katherine, your thoughts on the Chicago entrepreneurial, Chicago business scene. You've certainly seen a thing or two over your years in broadcast communication. Is Chicago going to be able to get through this pandemic okay?
I think so. I know there are real problems for a lot of people in some industries that are suffering badly. I also know that some are doing well, and I think there will be a shuffle, but people will find a new place and move forward.
Well, you know what? I hope that is true, and I think you are right. I think that Chicago, for all of our challenges, we are resilient, resilient leadership. I actually just heard on a show just recently that there's some additional companies that are moving to Chicago because of the workforce, because of the people. As you always say, Katherine, it's people and it's communication that make all the difference, and that is certainly what I'm seeing in this era of COVID. And right now, I think that where there's a challenge, I see the opportunity, and that just means that businesses here in Chicago, we have a global opportunity to grow and expand anywhere through social distancing. We can use all the technologies that are available, and using your communication tips and tools through making a first impression by leading, you can really take the market by the storm. So, Katherine Johns, thank you so much for joining me on Get Down to Business. One more time, if people want to find you online and schedule a free consultation, where should they go?
KatherineJohns.com.
KatherineJohns.com. I'll be joined by Dr. Jim White, a returning guest on Get Down to Business. When we return in just a moment, you're listening to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'll be chatting with the best-selling author of What's My Purpose? A Journey of Personal Professional Growth, and the new author of Broken America. Dr. Jim White will be joining me on Get Down to Business in just a moment. Chicago, don't touch that dial. You're listening to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We'll be right back.